Two WCC teams start off the NCAA tournament against SEC teams, and two WCC teams walk away with victories. Welcome all into the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Yes, Gonzaga and St. Mary's both won their openers in the NCAA tournament. Gonzaga taking down the other Bulldogs from Georgia 89-68, and St. Mary's rallying to take down Vanderbilt 59-56 on Friday. Both of them do advance, and for this I'll be breaking down obviously both of the wins and then the new matchups that they both have: Gonzaga against Houston and St. Mary's against Alabama. But these will be broken up into separate episodes. So for this one, we'll be focusing on the Zags. And if you want the St. Mary's one, the other one is now available on YouTube and on streaming services. Go over and take a listen to that one. But for this, we will focus on what Gonzaga was able to do and take down the East Coast Bulldogs in Georgia. Again, they won their game 89-68. And this one really it felt over in the first 5 minutes of the game. It felt very similar to what we saw Gonzaga do in the WCC championship game to St. Mary's, where they got up to 20-7 pretty early. And this one looked kind of similar. 27-3. It was actually even worse for Georgia in this one, as Gonzaga won its 16th straight first round game. And one of the notes going into this one was how they used the double big against St. Mary's, and how much of that would we see going into this one. And sure enough, we saw them go right back to this double big right away. Graham Ike and Braden Huff started together, and it continued to work. We saw Braden Huff get off to a really good start, Graham Ike get off to a good start, and what that allowed everything to happen is that it opened up the perimeter. Braden Huff, again, like mentioned, that he got off to a good start. He had 18 for the game, but what it allowed was for Caleb Battle to start to get going. Battle also had a very good WCC tournament, and he carried that over into his first NCAA tournament game. This is a guy who has spent a long time in college basketball at multiple stops, and finally was able to get a taste of this March experience, and he was great. He had 24 points, 4 for 7 from 3. He was doing it inside and out. He was driving to the basket, really getting to wherever he wanted on the floor. This was the Caleb Battle. I think we all thought that, well, maybe not we all thought, but I think was the optimistic outlook of what he would give the Zags going into this season. And while it was up and down throughout the course of the non-conference and the regular season, this was the moment where we talked about them needing someone like Battle. They needed someone like him for the NCAA tournament. They needed a dynamic playmaking guard that could get his own shot and really make defenses play on their heels, and that's exactly what he did in this game. Gonzaga also, again, talked about how the inside part of their game allowed the outside part of their game to flourish. They made 12 threes in this game after only scoring one of them in the WCC title game. Nolan Hickman had 18. Ike had a little bit of foul trouble, but it didn't matter much. The Zags defense was also on point in this one, much like it was really the last 2 months of the season. They held Georgia to 35% from the field, 5 for 26 from 3. Demery was held to 3 for 14 from the field. Kane was 3 for 9. Asa Newell was maybe the only bright spot for Georgia, or at least the biggest bright spot for Georgia. 20 points, 8 rebounds, the former Zag recruit. But this game got out of hand early. This game was in Gonzaga's control within the first few minutes. This was a very typical first-round matchup for the Zags. It always kind of boggles my mind that there are so many people who clearly do not pay attention that keep picking against the Zags in the first round. Again, 16 straight years that they have, 16 straight tournaments, I should say, that they have won in the first round. They have not lost a first-round game since 2008, and it took Steph Curry dropping 40 on the Zags to do it. So that is just the streak that we are working with. And on the flip side, we're look for Gonzaga moving on to this next round. It is Houston. Now, we knew that Gonzaga drawing the 8th seed was going to be a tall task to get back to the Sweet 16, reach their 10th straight Sweet 16 as they were riding an active streak of 9, which is the best in all of college basketball. And they will play a Houston team who is now working on their own streak of 5 straight Sweet 16s. So this will be a matchup on Saturday that something has to give. Someone is going to have their streak broken on Saturday night. And between these two, on the surface, this is very clearly about the offense against the defense. Gonzaga's offense against Houston's defense. Because these are the two things that both of these programs have made their success on, have had all of their success on, is the offense versus the defense. And we know that Houston is a load. They are big, they are physical, and they will grind you down, much like a St. Mary's team, much like what the Zags have had to do with dealing with the Gales. But defensively, this is a team that is more athletic. They are a little stronger. They're not as tall, but the formula is something that Gonzaga is very familiar with. This is a team in Houston that is second in opponent field goal percentage at 38. They're first in scoring defense at 50 with 57.9 points per game. Juwan Roberts, on a physicality standpoint, is going to be like looking in a mirror to Graham Ike, 6'8", 235. Like, again, like these two are going to bang a lot in this matchup. That one is just going to be fun to watch. These two go back and forth. And maybe the one understated thing about talking about this matchup, because everyone is focusing on the offense versus the defense, offense versus defense. Well, Houston's offense has been pretty good too. They're 5th in the nation in 3-point percentage at 39.6. They average 12.5 offensive rebounds per game. They are top 50 in the nation. They're also 6th in the nation in turnovers per game at 9.2. They do a lot of things well on the offensive end. And on an individual front, one of the guys that you can really look at is LJ Cryer. He's been everything that Houston could have hoped for when he came over from Baylor. 15 points per game, 42% from 3. And this is the thing. It's like he's going to make tough shots. He's going to score in this game. It's a matter of how tough can the Zags make those individual shots. I mean, I go back and think about watching one of those, the Houston-Iowa State game and a few weeks back, and it seemed like there was nothing that he couldn't make. He was making step back jumpers left and right. Like he just could not miss, no matter how tough the Cyclones were making those shots. So that is someone on the offensive end. Obviously, this is a pretty balanced team. This isn't a team that's going to blow you out on the offensive end. They score 74 a game. But because they slow the game down, because they are so good defensively, much like when the Zags play St. Mary's, you better take advantage of the opportunities that you do get. You better take advantage of the turnovers. You better take advantage of when you get to the free throw line. You better take advantage of every little bit, every offensive rebound. You better get second chance points. You better be able to hit the break and convert when you can, because the opportunities against a team like Houston are going to be few and far between. And a matchup like this is going to be a very tough matchup for Gonzaga. Even, again, thinking about what Gonzaga did against St. Mary's, and I know I keep going back to that matchup because it is at least a similar team, a very similar team to Houston. In those 3 matchups, they scored 57, 57, and 67. Sorry, 58, 58, and 67. That was the 3-point totals that Gonzaga had in those 3. So you know that they are going to have to play this ground and pound game. It's going to get physical, very physical, and they're going to need guys who step up in those roles. I think this is a game where Braden Huff because of what you're asking for on the defensive end in this game, I don't know how effective he's going to be. So we could see a little bit more of Michael Ajayi. This could be a game where, I mean, you're going to need Caleb Battle to do what he did the other night, because you need to find some of that offensive punch. You're going to need Nolan Hickman to hit those open jumpers, which we know he's capable of doing. He had 18 the other night against Georgia. Again, Nolan Hickman has been one of the more consistent performers in the NCAA tournament for the Zags over the last couple of years. And so having him, you're going to need him to perform well. You're going to need Ryan Nembhard to come through in the clutch. This is not going to be a blowout. This is not going to be a one, at least not for the Zags. Like, this is not going to be a one-sided affair. This is going to get down into the trenches. This is going to be close down the stretch. And I do think that they at least solved some of their late game woes when they beat St. Mary's last week. I think that what they were able to do down close in that game showed that they can have the perseverance to get over the top. They hadn't had too many of those close games, but they finally did have one, and it came at the most opportune time. It came in March. It came on the eve of the NCAA tournament, and the Zags are going to need everything go their way to have a shot at this one. Graham Ike is going to need to stay out of foul trouble for them to have a shot in this one. I don't think that if they have to go deeper into this bench, especially on the front line, that's going to work in the Zags' favor. They need Graham Ike on the floor. They're going to need him to play, I think, at least 30 minutes in this game for them to get out a victory. But looking at this contest, looking at what we're going to see, I think it's a matter of how the Zag defense is going to perform. I think it's less about the offense. I think they have played enough of these grinded out games that they'll figure it out there. It's whether or not they can keep up the pressure on the defensive end. You think about what they were able to do in the last couple of games, the number of turnovers they were able to force, how they were able to jump on the last two opponents, jumped on Georgia, jumped on St. Mary's. That is what they have to do. They have to have a good start. The Zags are going to need to do what we know they can do best. They're going to need to get out and run. They're going to need to hit those open looks. They're also going to need to make sure that they're playing the same level of defense that we have seen the last couple of months, which that would lead me to believe that we're going to see that again, because they have been so consistent on that front, really ever since that Santa Clara game way back in January. And looking at this game, I mean, I see the spread. I see that the over-under is low, which leads me to believe, like I think it was 138, leads me to believe this is going to be a Houston-style game. And it's not that Gonzaga can't win one of these games. I think the challenge is going to be how many clutch shots, how many opportunities are they going to get to be able to close this game out. And this is where I unfortunately think the road does come to an end for the Zags. I think the Sweet 16 streak does get snapped. Houston has been so good all year long, has been in a number of these situations, and has succeeded in these situations in close games where the Zags have just not done it often enough, have not been consistent enough in those scenarios. And even though the Zags very well could actually win this game, the fact that they drew a 1 in round 2, I think was going to be the tipping point for whether or not they could go deeper and deeper into this tournament. In my head, the streak ends here. They very well could, and they would be. You can't call Gonzaga a Cinderella at this point, but not being the first one to knock off a 1 seed would be incredible. And if you were to look forward just a bit, as I'm recording this, Purdue is stomping McNeese. So the winner of this Houston Gonzaga game would get Purdue. And of course, we know that is the team who eliminated the Zags a year ago, played them twice, the Zach Edey version of Purdue, and were able to knock them off. Now, this year version of Purdue, if the Zags were somehow to get by Houston and meet Purdue in the next round, I think there's a very good shot that we would see the Zags be able to move on to the Elite Eight, because this Purdue team is not the same Purdue team of a year ago, and the Zag team is going to be hungrier as they get into that second weekend. All right, one more time. We have one more preview episode about covering St. Mary's on the YouTube channel as well, on the Spotify channel as well. So go over and check that one out as well before you watch that game on Sunday afternoon. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow along on social media at Unofficial WCC Pod. We have one more week. We have one more weekend games. One more, I guess, round of basketball, I should say, before we hit the second weekend. And we will see which of, if not both, or either of the WCC teams continue to move on. And it's obviously an uphill challenge one more time, as both of these squads will be facing Power 4 squads. Zags looking to reach their 10th straight Sweet 16 in the matchup against Houston. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody, and I will catch you later.